The author spot. How are you?
This is the clothes I wore.
No.
The first I'm wearing 1965 hair.
Les, that's what I was talking about. Let me show the picture. Lest
Show
they
the
think you.
picture.
Is this the same dress that you wore? Was it 65?
February 17th, 1965.
21.
21 years.
Ever wondered what it takes to get permanently banned from television's most legendary talk show? Buckle up as we dive into the dramatic fall from grace that shook The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. You're probably thinking, okay, but who was she? What did she say? Why did he take it so personally? And most importantly, did she ever get the last laugh? If you stick with me till the end, you'll see. You'll see exactly how one woman's truth became too powerful for a man who ran the airwaves. Ready? Let's get into it. Who was Johnny Carson, and why did he matter so much? Johnny Carson wasn't just another TV host. He was the undisputed king of late-night television who ruled NBC's The Tonight Show for 3 incredible decades. From 1962 to 1992, Carson transformed a simple talk show into American pop culture's most powerful platform. Born in Iowa in 1925, Carson started his entertainment journey performing magic tricks as the Great Carsoni. This early showmanship shaped his unique ability to charm audiences with quick wit and perfect timing. His natural talent for making guests feel comfortable while keeping viewers glued to their screens became legendary. The Tonight Show under Carson became more than entertainment. It was a cultural kingmaker. A comedian's career could skyrocket after one successful appearance. Musicians could become overnight sensations with a single performance. Carson's famous nod of approval carried more weight than any critic's review. She walked onto the set of The Tonight Show thinking it would be just another interview. But within minutes, Johnny Carson's smile had vanished. The audience was shifting in their seats. And the tension? You could slice it with a butter knife. What did she say that shocked the king of late night into silence? Why was her name suddenly blacklisted from the guest list? And more importantly, was she really that out of line? Or was Johnny just protecting something or someone? Sit tight, because what happened next turned into one of the most awkward and unforgettable moments in TV history. And the real reason she was never allowed back might just surprise you. His influence extended far beyond entertainment. Politicians sought his approval during campaigns. Business products featured in his monologues flew off shelves the next day. Carson's reactions to current events often shaped public opinion more than news broadcasts. What made Carson special was his masterful interview style. He knew exactly when to let guests shine and when to jump in with the perfect quip. His raised eyebrow or knowing smirk could say more than words. Every aspiring talk show host studied his impeccable timing and genuine curiosity about his guests. The Tonight Show's format under Carson became the gold standard. His opening monologue turned current events into comedy gold. His chemistry with sidekick Ed McMahon created television's most famous partnership. Even his golf swings during monologues became iconic moments viewers loved. Carson's power in Hollywood was unmatched. A single joke about a celebrity in his monologue could damage reputations. An invitation to sit on his couch meant you'd made it big. His influence on comedy was immense. Carson gave countless comedians their big breaks. Stars like David Letterman, Jerry Seinfeld, and Ellen DeGeneres credit him for launching their careers. His comic timing and interview techniques still influence today's hosts. Behind the scenes, Carson was known for being intensely private. This contrast with his public persona added to his mystique. He rarely gave interviews and fiercely protected his personal life. This mystery only increased his show's must-watch appeal. The Tonight Show's massive success under Carson changed television forever. His show averaged 15 million nightly viewers when cable TV barely existed. His final episode in 1992 drew an astronomical 50 million viewers. These numbers remain unmatched in late-night television. Carson's impact on popular culture can't be overstated. He turned late-night television into a cultural phenomenon. His influence on entertainment, politics, and public opinion created a legacy that modern hosts still try to match. 30 years after his retirement, Carson remains the measuring stick for talk show excellence. Understanding Carson's significance helps explain why getting banned from his show was so devastating for performers. His power to make or break careers made him both respected and feared in Hollywood. When celebrities crossed him, the consequences could be severe and long-lasting. Johnny Carson, the man behind the curtain. Johnny Carson came from a small town, Iowa. Born in 1925, quiet, thoughtful, with that classic Midwestern politeness, suddenly finds himself falling head over heels for magic. Yes, magic. Not the kind with wizards and dragons, but the kind that makes a coin disappear behind your ear or turns a scarf into a dove. John William Carson, Johnny to the world later, was just 14 when he got bitten by the magic bug, and boy did it bite hard. He wasn't loud or showy, more the type to sit in the back and watch how people reacted. But give him a deck of cards and a little stage, and boom, he lit up. He even gave himself a stage name, the Great Carsoni. How adorable is that? And can you believe he was doing little gigs at church events and Rotary Club meetings for $3 a pop? $3. But honestly, it was never about the money. It was the thrill, the sparkle in people's eyes when he pulled off a trick. That feeling right there? That was his first taste of connecting with an audience, and it stuck with him for life. Now, fast forward a few years. The boy who once made handkerchiefs vanish is now wearing a Navy uniform during World War II. Life took a serious turn, as it did for so many young men back then, but Carson didn't lose that spark. After the war, he went to the University of Nebraska because, life has to go on. And guess what? He was still doing magic. Except now, his shows paid a bit more. $25. Not bad, right? But here's the twist that most people miss. While he was pulling rabbits out of hats, he was also writing a thesis. And not just any thesis. It was titled, How to Write Comedy for Radio. Can you imagine that? A college kid basically dissecting how to be funny. He wasn't just winging it. He was studying comedy like it was science. He dug into what made people laugh, how jokes were structured, why timing mattered, like who does that at 20? Carson. That's who. Then came his first big step into the broadcasting world. WeWow Radio and Television in Omaha. He hosted this quirky little morning show called The Squirrel's Nest. It sounds ridiculous now, but it was kind of brilliant in its own silly way. He literally interviewed pigeons that supposedly spied on local politicians. Like, how do you even come up with that? But honestly, if you think about it, that's classic Johnny Carson. Funny, clever, a little sarcastic, but never mean-spirited. That show may have seemed goofy, but it planted the seeds for what he'd later do on a much, much bigger stage. Now, 1954 was the year everything changed. Red Skelton, a huge TV star at the time, got a concussion, and Carson, still kind of unknown, was called in to substitute. Talk about pressure, right? But Carson nailed it. That one shot led to The Johnny Carson Show in 1955. Okay, so truth be told, it wasn't a smash hit. It barely lasted a year. But here's the thing. He didn't let it break him. He kept going. In 1957, he took on a hosting gig on a game show called Who Do You Trust? Side note, what a wild name for a game show, right? And that's where he met Ed McMahon. Yes, the Ed McMahon. The guy with the golden laugh who would stand beside Carson for the next 3 decades. They were like peanut butter and jelly, those two. Then comes the big ask. NBC comes knocking in 1962 looking for someone to take over The Tonight Show. But Carson? He actually said no at first. Can you believe that? He thought it would be too hard to interview people every night for over an hour. Honestly, can you blame him? That's a lot of small talk. And on live TV, no pressure. Plus, a bunch of other big names turned it down. Bob Newhart, Groucho Marx, even Jackie Gleason. So finally, Carson agrees. And on October 1st, 1962, he takes the stage. But it wasn't smooth sailing from the get-go. No, his first year was rough. people were still mourning Jack Parr, the previous host, and Carson had to win them over, slowly, carefully, joke by joke, night after night. And oh, how he won them over. By 1978, Carson was averaging 17 million viewers a night. 17 million. Just to put that in perspective, most of today's late-night hosts would kill for even a third of that. NBC was raking in $40 to $50 million a year just from his show alone. I mean, can we just take a moment and appreciate that level of impact? And it wasn't just about the numbers. Johnny Carson became the guy everyone wanted to sit next to on the couch. Comedians prayed for a shot on The Tonight Show. Because if Carson gave you the nod, if he invited you over for a chat after your set, you made it. Just ask David Letterman or Stephen Wright. That moment meant everything. But what really made Carson different, what made him stick, was how well he understood people. He once wrote in his college thesis that once a comedian wins their sympathies, he'll win their confidence and they will go along with him on a gag. Isn't that so spot on? He got it. He understood that you don't just make people laugh, you make them like you first. That's why he never came off as smug or pushy. He was charming, calm, totally in control, but never show off. He made it look easy, like he was just casually chatting with you from your living room, not carrying the weight of a multi-million-dollar show on his back. And then came one of the most game-changing decisions in television history. He moved The Tonight Show from New York to Los Angeles in 1972. At the time, that was huge. New York was still considered the cultural capital. But Carson, he saw the future. Oh, he dragged the heart of late night to Hollywood, and in doing so, he shifted the entire entertainment industry. Broadway was great, sure, but Hollywood was booming, and Johnny was right there in the middle of it all, with the brightest stars of every era sitting on his couch, laughing with him. He stayed at the top for 30 years. 30 years. That's longer than some people's entire careers. And when he finally decided to say goodbye in 1992, oh man, it was a moment. His last episode pulled in about 50 million viewers. 50 million. That's not just a TV show, that's history. People didn't just watch Johnny Carson, they grew up with him. He was the guy who tucked America into bed with a joke and a wink. What could someone possibly do on live TV that was so shocking, so off-limits, that the most powerful man in late night decided to slam the door shut? For good? Well, that's exactly what happened to Joan Rivers, a woman who once had Johnny Carson's full support, until one moment flipped everything upside down. Was it betrayal? Was it ego? Or was it something deeper, something no one saw coming? Buckle up, because we're diving into the rise of a comedy legend, her complicated friendship with Carson, and the bold move that made her persona non grata on one of TV's most iconic stages. And trust me, you're gonna want to sit tight till the very end, because what happened after the cameras stopped rolling might just change how you see both of them forever. Joan Rivers' rise and relationship with Carson. Long before Joan Rivers became the dazzling, sharp-tongued queen of comedy we all know, she was just this gutsy, ambitious woman trying to elbow her way into a world that practically screamed, "No girls allowed." Born Joan Alexandra Molinsky in Brooklyn, she didn't have a silver spoon or a built-in fan base. What she had was grit, nerve, and a mouth that could slice through social nonsense like a hot knife through butter. And unlike so many other women trying to make a name for themselves back then, she refused to play the predictable "I hate being a housewife" card. Instead, she went straight for society's jugular, roasting celebrities, calling out ridiculous trends, and pointing out the absurd stuff we all silently noticed but didn't dare say out loud. Now, Joan didn't just waltz into fame. Oh no, it was a long, exhausting grind. After graduating from Barnard College with a degree in English literature, she bounced from one odd job to another. She worked as a fashion coordinator, tried her hand at advertising, and basically said yes to whatever paid the bills while secretly nursing that comedy dream. But even when she finally started doing stand-up in places like the Gaslight Cafe and The Bitter End, tiny joints tucked into New York's Greenwich Village. It wasn't all applause and roses. Most of the time, it was just cold stares and men telling her flat out, "Women aren't funny." Can you believe that? Like, who says that to someone's face? Still, Joan didn't back down. She just kept showing up, night after night, wherever she could find a stage. Didn't matter if it was some grimy basement with 10 people in the audience, she'd grab that mic and give it her all. That tenacity, that never-quit energy, it became her signature. Her jokes got sharper, her timing got tighter, and she developed that quick fire, no time to breathe delivery that made her unforgettable. Even when the laughs were scarce, she just kept grinding. Because what was the alternative? Giving up? Please, Joan Rivers didn't do quit. Then came the big break. February 17th, 1965, The Tonight Show. Now, this was huge. Back then, getting a spot on Johnny Carson's couch wasn't just a milestone, it was a career-launching rocket. But Joan wasn't just lucky to be there, she earned that moment with blood, sweat, and punchlines. She was nervous, of course, but she stepped out onto that stage and delivered a 7-minute set that would change her life. And get this, Carson, who was famously hard to impress, actually laughed. Like, really laughed. That was the moment. That was when everything shifted. When he invited her to sit down on the couch afterward, which was his way of saying, "You've got it, kid." It was like the comedy gods had just handed her a golden ticket. And then he said those magic words, "God, you're funny. You're going to be a star." Can you imagine hearing that from Johnny freaking Carson? From that night forward, Joan's life was never the same. She started getting booked like crazy, appearing regularly on The Tonight Show, and becoming a household name. Carson would introduce her as one of the funniest people in the world. And, honestly, he wasn't wrong. But it wasn't just about being funny. Carson saw something deeper in her, something that reminded him of himself. Her timing, her ability to read a room, her meticulous preparation. It all clicked with his own comedic instincts. And they had this unexpected on-screen chemistry that just worked. She was bold. He was laid back. She pushed boundaries. He reeled things in. Together, they were magic. It wasn't long before their relationship went beyond guest appearances. Carson started mentoring her, guiding her through the treacherous maze of showbiz. He gave her advice on material, helped her shape her career, and basically became the mentor every young comic dreams of having. And here's where it gets even bigger. In 1983, Carson made Joan his permanent guest host. That was monumental, like history-making. No woman had ever held that position before. So anytime Carson needed a night off, who did NBC call? Not a lineup of rotating comics. Nope, they called Joan Rivers. She wasn't just filling time. She was trusted with the biggest late-night show in America. And she killed it. Joan herself always gave Carson the credit. "Johnny was the one who established me," she'd say. "He made me the first permanent guest host. I was his first, and I was his only." You could tell she adored him, not just professionally, but personally. She respected the man who gave her a shot when nobody else would. Their bond seemed unbreakable. He was the man who made her, and she never forgot it. Behind the scenes, he continued to help her navigate the brutal entertainment world. He admired her work ethic, how she never half-assed a joke, how she was always rewriting, always perfecting, always trying to push just a little further. He saw her bravery, too. Joan wasn't afraid to be controversial, to make people squirm a bit, to talk about things most comics wouldn't touch with a 10-foot mic stand. She was always ahead of the curve, always ready to go where others wouldn't, and the audience loved her for it. They didn't just laugh, they trusted her. When she filled in for Carson, they felt like they were in good hands. She wasn't just a guest anymore, she was part of the show. She was the woman who'd kicked down the door to a boys-only club and proved she belonged. And yet, who could have ever guessed that this very partnership, the one that built her, would eventually come crashing down in the most heartbreaking way? Isn't it wild how something that feels so solid, so forever, can just fall apart? But that's another story. For For now, what matters is this. Joan Rivers didn't just break into comedy. She clawed her way in, joke by joke, club by club, refusing to accept that funny was a male-only trait. And when Johnny Carson gave her that first real shot, she didn't just show up. She owned it. She didn't just open the door for herself. She kicked it off its hinges so every woman after her could walk through. And honestly, that's pretty damn legendary. The breaking point of what really happened. Joan had spent years, literal years, as Johnny Carson's right-hand woman. She wasn't just some random guest host on The Tonight Show. She was his go-to fill-in. Trusted, sharp, funny, and always on point. People saw her as part of Carson's legacy. They had that mentor-mentee bond that felt solid, almost like family. So imagine the shockwaves when Joan made a single career move that turned that close-knit bond into a permanent rift. And it all started with a phone call that never quite landed, and a business opportunity that looked too good to pass up. Okay, so here's how it went down. At the time, the Fox television network was still the new kid on the block. They were trying to make waves, break the mold, and do something bold. So what did they do? They approached Joan with a jaw-dropping offer, $10 million to host her own late-night talk show. Not just host, but headline. It was going to be called The Late Show, starring Joan Rivers, and it came with the kind of perks that any entertainer would dream of. A 5-year contract that could go up to $15 million, the freedom to shape her own show, and even a producer role for her husband, Edgar Rosenberg. I mean, who wouldn't be tempted? It was a chance to make history. She would become the first woman to host a late-night show on a major network. Let that sink in. The first woman. That was a huge deal. But here's where it gets messy. Joan didn't just take the deal for the money or the glory, though let's be honest, that definitely played a part. She'd already been feeling uneasy at NBC. There was this secret memo floating around with a list of 10 potential replacements if Johnny ever retired, and her name wasn't even on it. Not even on it. That stings, right? On top of that, Carson had just gotten a 2-year contract renewal, while Joan just one. That kind of treatment makes you start wondering if the people you've been loyal to are really all that loyal to you. So, can you blame her for thinking, maybe it's time I look out for myself? But the real heartbreak came down to timing and silence. Joan always claimed she tried to do the right thing. The moment the Fox deal hit the press, she says the first thing she did was call Johnny. And guess what? He hung up. Just like that. No conversation, no, let's talk about this. Not even a cold, I'm disappointed in you. Just click. She tried calling back. Same thing. And after that, he never spoke to her again. Like ever. Even when they ran into each other at restaurants, he would flat out ignore her, like she didn't exist. Now, Carson's side of the story, he insisted Joan never called him at all. He said he found out about her new show the same way everyone else did, through a press release. So who's telling the truth? It's hard to say, but either way, it created this enormous wedge between them that never got fixed. And Johnny didn't stop at just giving her the silent treatment. He went full-on Cold War. He banned her from ever appearing on The Tonight Show again. And get this, it wasn't just while he was hosting. That ban lasted through Jay Leno's time and Conan O'Brien's too. Like, wow, that's some serious grudge holding. Now, here's where it really gets personal. This wasn't just about a business deal. Not to Johnny. Other people had started their own shows and gone off to do their own thing. And he didn't react like this. But Joan, that hit differently. They had something special, or at least she thought they did. She later said that she believed it came down to her being a woman. She felt like Johnny saw her as his, like she owed him something, like she wasn't supposed to leave or outgrow his shadow. He didn't like that as a woman. I went up against him, she said. And honestly, that kind of stings even more. Because she wasn't just losing a mentor, she was being punished for daring to be bold on her own terms. And if you think the fallout only affected her and Carson, think again. The Tonight Show team basically sent out this unspoken threat. If you go on Joan's show, don't expect to be invited back here. And let's be real, Carson's show was the kingmaker back then. Celebrities were terrified to cross him. So many of them stayed away from Joan's show just to protect their own careers. That kind of isolation, it's brutal, and it hurt her show badly. The Late Show was canceled in less than 9 months. Just like that, all that promise and momentum came crashing down. She walked onto Johnny Carson's stage thinking it would be just another funny night. But what happened next had people gasping, the audience stunned, and Johnny completely blindsided. So what did she say, or do, that got her banned for life from the most watched show on TV? And why did it cause such a stir that she was never invited back again? Sit tight, because the full story isn't just shocking, it's downright unbelievable, and the fallout lasted longer than anyone expected. The ban and its fallout. After she was ousted from Fox, the truth started to settle in for Joan, and it was grim. The weight of Carson's influence hit her like a freight train. This wasn't some casual misunderstanding where people whispered behind her back for a few weeks. No, this was strategic. NBC and Carson made sure the whispers became roars. Joan said it herself. Her career was in the toilet, and she wasn't being dramatic. Vegas contracts? Gone. Invitations? Non-existent. She went from being a celebrated trailblazer to feeling like, in her own haunting words, a non-person. Think about that. Being erased from the very spaces you once lit up. And what's wild is that the ban wasn't just Carson's personal grudge, it became industry law, like some unwritten but strictly enforced rule. Even after Carson left, the ban stuck around like a curse. Jay Leno didn't lift it. Conan didn't touch it. It wasn't until Jimmy Fallon came on the scene, almost 30 years later, that Joan got a brief moment back on The Tonight Show, the very platform that helped launch her. Can you imagine building a house from the ground up, brick by brick, and then being locked out of it for 3 whole decades? The industry didn't just stop calling her, it turned cold. Affiliates refused to air her new show on Fox, not necessarily because they disliked her content, but because they didn't want to risk crossing Carson. That's how powerful his influence was. Loyalty to him came at her expense. And to make matters worse, The Tonight Show team basically told celebrities, hey, if you go on Joan's show, don't bother showing up here. Like, what kind of ultimatum is that? It was a quiet but crushing blacklisting. And without access to A-list guests, her ratings suffered. People didn't tune in, not because she wasn't funny. Joan Rivers was always funny, but because Hollywood decided to pretend she didn't exist. But here's the thing people sometimes forget. It wasn't just her career that suffered. Her personal life took a brutal hit, too. After everything went down with Fox in 1987, her marriage to Edgar Rosenberg, her husband of over 30 years, started to unravel. And just 3 months after they separated, Edgar took his own life. He overdosed on prescription pills. It was tragic beyond words. Joan later said that the humiliation from the whole ordeal, the professional blowback, the disgrace played a big part in his decision. Can you imagine carrying that kind of guilt on top of everything else? And as if that weren't enough, Joan discovered that Edgar, who had been in charge of managing their finances, had left her in debt. So now, she wasn't just grieving the loss of her husband and dealing with a tanked career. She was also trying to crawl out of a financial hole she hadn't even known existed. That's how low things got. She was dealing with public rejection, private grief, and money troubles, all at once. It's almost too much for one person to handle, right? But the part that sticks with you, the part that makes you want to stand up and clap for her, is that she didn't give up. Even in the face of all that darkness, Joan kept going. She kept working, kept fighting, kept finding ways to make people laugh, even when she was crying behind closed doors. Later, when she looked back on it all, she admitted something she didn't even fully understand at the time. The Carson breakup hurt me a lot, without realizing it. That's such a raw and honest thing to say. Because when you're in the middle of survival mode, you don't always process the emotional wounds until much later. So yeah, people might remember the jokes, the red carpet zingers, the sharp tongue, but what they don't always see is the woman behind all that. The one who was shut out, knocked down, and still managed to stand back up. Joan Rivers didn't just face a career setback, she faced a silent war waged against her by the most powerful man in late night. And somehow, she survived it. Isn't that something? With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.